Merci, Excellence, pour ces orientations. À présent, je voudrais demander à M. Admasu Nebebe, directeur au ministère des Finances et du Développement économique de la République fédérale démocratique d'Éthiopie, de prendre la parole pour son allocution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairperson, Excellencies, and the distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by welcoming you all to Addis Ababa. It is an honor for the government and the people of Ethiopia to receive you from all parts of the continent and beyond. I hope, despite your busy schedule, you will find some time to visit the city. I would like to thank Dr. Jin Ping, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, and Mr. Abdullahi Jane, UN Under Secretary General and the Executive Secretary of UNECA, for once again having the meeting in Addis Ababa. I commend both of you for the manner in which you are steering the institutions that you lead. Under your strategic and visionary leadership, the AU Commission and the UNECA have become very strong Pan-African institutions, supporting the development agenda of the African Union. Mr. Chairperson, this conference has grown to become one of the best fora for the exchange and the sharing of knowledge among African policy makers on the issue of finance, planning, socio-economic development, and the central banking. I have always enjoyed attending this conference, as we are always able to find African solutions to the challenges of socio-economic development of Africa. The theme for this year's conference, Unleashing African Potentials as a Pole of Global Growth, has been chosen by the organizer because it is of relevance to all of us. In recent years, Africa has been registering solid economic performance. This good economic performance is underpinned by the sound macroeconomic management, good economic and political governance, capable management of government business, and the growing private sector. It is because of this great economic performance by many African countries that many see Africa as the next growth pole if we do things right. Chairperson, although Africa's growth rate has been improved in the last few years, it has been volatile and insufficient to achieve MDGs. Moreover, the benefit of the growth achieved have not, for most part, been shared broadly across society, largely because growth has been concentrated in the extractive sectors and also capital incentive sectors. Compared to other regions of the developing world, most of the African countries have made limited progress in reducing poverty. Stimulating further quality and also sustainable economic growth in Africa is essential for poverty reduction. To do this, policymakers must vigorously pursue current and consistent policies that ensure sustained, prudent public expenditure policies, particularly the scaling up of infrastructure development, reasonable macroeconomic stability, a stronger international effort aimed at coping with external shocks, productive public-private partnership, and above all, peace and security. It is essential that we ensure that economic growth is socially inclusive. Financing the implementation of poverty reduction strategies will require both domestic and external resources. African countries would have to aggressively mobilize domestic resources to finance pro-poor growth policies, including taking up to stem illicit capital flows from the continent. Part of the domestic mobilization could also include efficient collection of taxes and the use of capital market to issue financing instruments such as bonds and the treasury bills. Mr. Chairperson, another challenge that would potentially slow African growth performance, particularly the oil importing ones, is the high world price of petroleum. High world oil prices slow down economic activities and constrain progress towards achieving MDGs, especially in low-income oil-importing African countries, as these countries are heavily dependent on oil production and the consumption needs. The challenge for all of us is to work hard towards finding sound policies to mitigate the impact of high oil prices on oil-importing African countries and make use of alternative sources of energy such as geothermal, hydropower, and solar power, which Africa has the comparative advantage in these areas. Mr. Chairperson, the impact of current Eurozone crisis on Africa has not been well and also thoroughly analyzed. I'm glad that our ministers would have an opportunity to discuss it in the coming few days. What we are experiencing is that some African countries are being affected by the downturn in their trade flows as well as the drying up of trade finance. The crisis is also impacting on Africa's export of industrial raw materials, as weak demand in Europe could potentially cause the price of commodities to drop. I look forward to the ministers for their guidance on addressing this challenge. Mr. Chairperson, for Africa to become a growth pole would also require improvement in our weak infrastructure. Despite the commendable efforts of African countries to strengthen, improve, and expand infrastructure, there are still gaps across the continent. The weakness in the continent's infrastructure contributes to a great deal in raising transaction costs and consequently the cost of doing business in Africa and impeding factor mobility, investment, and the competitiveness in the global marketplace. To strengthen our position in the global trade, it is also important that African countries are supported to build a strong integrated network of roads, railways, maritime transport, inland waterways, and civil aviation. This could be achieved in part through the promotion of public-private partnership in infrastructure development and the mobilization of domestic and international resources. We also need to rethink our strategies for development and focus on the promotion of regional integration, including intra-Africa trade. Despite the modest efforts by the regional economic communities, trade within Africa is very low, accounting for about only 10% of the value of total exports. This implies that most of what Africa exports goes outside of the continent. This needs to be addressed. If we can address all the challenges and implement sound economic policies, Africa will surely become a growth pole. These efforts must be backed by good economic and political governance and also peace and security. Mr. Chairperson, your deliberations at this meeting are vital to strengthening of our economies. The recommendation you make to the ministers would assist member states to formulate and implement sound policies. It is my fervent hope that we would depart from this meeting, also from Addis, with a renewed commitment to tackle the challenges that are hampering our economic development so that when we meet again a year from now, we would have made tremendous strides. Africa's time is now. We must not wait. We need to uplift the lives of many of our poor people from the poverty. I now declare this meeting is open. I thank you for your attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur. Distingués invités, une fois de plus, en votre nom, je voudrais remercier Leur Excellence, Monsieur Kouenzelamba, commissaire aux affaires africaines à la Commission de l'Union africaine, et Son Excellence, M. Abdoulaye Diané, secrétaire général adjoint de l'Organisation des Nations Unies et secrétaire exécutif de la CEA, et Monsieur le directeur représentant le gouvernement éthiopien, pour leur discours d'orientation. J'estime que ces discours vont nous rester à l'esprit durant tous nos travaux et pourront éclairer notre marche vers les résultats vers lesquels nous nous orientons. Donc, sans plus tarder, je voudrais vous inviter à prendre la pause café qui met fin à cette première session et pour 15 minutes. Et à notre retour, l'agenda va se dérouler comme cela vous a été déroulé un peu auparavant. Je voudrais rappeler quand même qu'une annonce avait été faite avant le début de cette cérémonie, c'est que les chefs de délégation sont invités à rester sur place pour pouvoir organiser l'élection du nouveau bureau. Donc, nous comptons sur eux. C'est sur ce que je déclare la séance suspendue.